I'd love to share why I think what we all do is so important and how that led to the creation of Glint. But I'd also like to talk about what are some of the key things that we learned over the last 6.5 years and share some of those nuggets with all of you. So many of you have spent your entire career or much of your career in this people analytics, people success, HR ecosystem. Whereas I came to this party much later than most of you did. And I want to share the story of how I got here and how that impacted the creation of Glint and what we do today. So when I started my career, I worked at a company that was successful, but the founders and the leaders of that company weren't very happy. And I went to another company after that where the leader of that company wasn't very happy either, but they were really successful. And I was sort of shocked by this because I had grown up with this mindset that, happiness is about external success, and you sort of complete these things, and then you end up being happy in life. So I was a little rocked by it, but it also led me on this really, really fun journey to understand happiness. And I've learned a lot over the last almost exactly 30 years. I started doing that in February 30 years ago. And so one of the things that I learned about happiness is that we have predispositions for happiness. And that those things get set relatively early in your upbringing. But the good news is, even our predispositions for happiness can be changed. And they respond to things like meditation, behavioral techniques, and even simple things like going for a walk or a run, or powerful, simple practices like gratitude practices. The second thing that I learned was that our life circumstances, those things that we spend so much of our time trying to rearrange, things like, well, I'll be happy if I just get the promotion, I'll be happy. Or if I could just get this job, I'll be happy. Or if I just get my kid into this school, or my kid makes the team, or he makes this shot, or she makes this goal, or whatever. Turns out those things that we spend so much time rearranging actually don't account for nearly as much of our happiness as we think they will, long term, for most people. But one of the most interesting and most powerful things that I learned is that people who live their life, I think they only have one life. Well, I guess that's debatable. People who live their life in service of others tend to be happier. In fact, people who see their vocation as being in service of others tend to be happier. There's a fair amount of data around this. Firemen tend to be happier, nurses tend to be happier. But what I didn't realize was that actually almost anyone can see their life as being in service of others and be happier in their job. And so my co-founder, Gautam Kura, and I, who's also sort of on this, coincidentally, this path that I was on, we decided we wanted to create something that would be of service to others. And something that would be a win for humanity. And we decided to dedicate ourselves to understanding happiness at work. And that was the beginning of our mission to help people be happier and more successful at work. And early on, we had a couple of interesting insights around what shape this might take. The first thing that I realized was that as a CEO, prior to Glint, I had lots of great data. I was CEO of a company in the 90s. That was a long time ago. But we called them scorecards back then. We didn't call them dashboards. You wanted to have a balanced scorecard, right? But I had a digital scorecard. I knew how many units of every video game we were shipping every week to Target or Toys R Us. All right? Later came products like Salesforce, where you could see your bookings by minute. Marketing solutions where you could score any lead that came in instantaneously to know the quality of that lead and predict the value of that lead. But when it came to the average manager knowing the health of their team, I wouldn't say people were flying blind, because people-to-people interaction is always the most important thing. But there was really nothing that gave them the data to back up how their teams were doing. The second thing we realized then, and you continue to see this data, this is Glint data, is that it's surprising how many people actually aren't happy at work. Right? Gallup loves to post, 47% of people aren't happy at work. Anyways, I'm not sure that's exactly true, but I do know that we've got very good data at Glint that shows that roughly a third of people report not being that happy at work. Wouldn't recommend their companies to others, and don't feel a sense of belonging. So what I want to talk about today is the importance of us as an industry creating a platform to fix this. Right, there's so many things that we want to and need to get right. We want to make sure we're attracting the right people to our companies, that we're onboarding them in the right way, that they're continuing to learn, develop, and grow, that they're motivated and feel they have impact, they're empowered, so that they're engaged and have a great experience, are successful, and they stay. And so the message I want to share is why I think we're doing what we do is so important, because when we get it right, we can actually have a really big impact on how happy people are. And therefore, a really big impact on how happy the world and the globe is. And so that's why I'm so excited about what we do as an industry and the important role that analytics is playing in reshaping our industry. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But here are 6 sort of things that we have seen over the years, that if companies do this, they tend to be significantly more effective in increasing engagement on their teams. And the companies that don't do a few or a bunch of these things tend to struggle. And so I don't know if any one of these things is necessarily going to be something you've never heard before, but when I come to a conference like this, it's like my goal is if I can just take away one nugget, or if I can just be reminded or get nudged to do one thing differently based on what I heard, then it's a success for me. And so I'm hoping one of these 6 things resonate with you. The first thing that we learned was that an agile approach to engagement simply works much better. And as a sort of outsider, or was an outsider to this industry, I continue to be shocked that this is a surprise to people. Like, wait, let me understand this more clearly. If I measure something more often and respond to it more often, it improves better? It's like, how do we know that in every other aspect of business? But we somehow don't even yet know it on the HR side, on the engagement side. It turns out that companies that pulse more frequently, have more conversations, and take action are significantly better at improving engagement levels, reducing attrition, and having a big impact. So I just pulled one set of data. We've got multiple that it showed stock prices. In 2016, for companies that were pulsing annually, their stock price increased 4%. For companies that were pulsing 2 or 3 times a year, their stock price increased 17%. But for companies that were pulsing quarterly, their stock prices increased 40%. Now look, I know we have a lot of data people in the room. I know the difference between correlation and causation, statistical significance, all that good stuff. But we have a ton of data that backs this up and shows that more frequent pulsing improves things more quickly, like engagement, and other outcomes like patient satisfaction, customer satisfaction, employee retention, and all the business outcomes that we're trying to change. So it still floors me that so many companies are still pulsing their populations once every 1 to 2 years. It's staggering. I mean, can you imagine being an athlete? Let's say you're a woman who wants to get to the Olympics in diving. Could you imagine going to see your coach once a year and getting a list of 20 things? And then showing up a year later? Like you wouldn't even get to your high school team, never mind the Olympics. Right? You work with your coach, I don't know how many hours a day it is, but hours a day, every day, for years. And yet our industry is still caught up in this approach of pulsing, doing a giant pulse every 1 to 2 years. It's staggering to me. And we've seen that pulsing more frequently makes a difference. Okay, number 2. Data is really cool. But I don't need to tell this group that insights are what really matters. But what we've seen is the more specific and actionable the insights, and here's the important piece, the more connected to business outcomes, the bigger impact you can have. When our people analytics partners start talking about business outcomes, they have a seat at the strategic table. When they're just talking about engagement scores, they might have a seat or they might not, or the seat might not be as big. So connecting these things to business outcomes is critical. We work with one of the largest transportation companies in the world. They connect their engagement data to things like customer satisfaction, on-time rates, and safety. And it's staggering to see the impact of engagement. Engagement results alone account for 1/3 of the difference in injury rates. Close to 30% of the on-time differences. Somewhere in the high 20s, I forget the exact number. At a major healthcare company, the differences in engagement scores account for 50% of the difference in customer satisfaction scores. Patient satisfactions in that case. At one of the world's largest mining companies, people that are more engaged are 50% less likely to be injured on the job. In fact, the correlation simply with our question about meaning and purpose was more highly correlated with injury rates than the completion success in some of their training classes. It's staggering how important this stuff is. And connecting this to not just scalar questions, but open-ended questions, so that you can see, like, what are people talking about? Is it positive or negative? How are those things connected? Oh, they're talking about careers. That's interesting. Well, what's actually more interesting is, like, what else are they talking about when they're talking about careers? Oh, they're talking about learning and development opportunities. Or they're talking about advancement. Or they're talking about inclusion and diversity. They're talking about a sense of belonging. Like, what's causing the negative sentiment in careers? And having the ability to see that. Third thing, and I think this might be in some ways it's so obvious, but in some ways for me, the biggest, I won't call it a discovery, but the biggest wake up I personally had about the industry. It's like, we thought it was all about getting people real-time results, the ability to slice and dice data in real time. Yes, that's really important. But it turns out who gets the results is more important, right? In the old days, I mean, you'd be surprised at the number of companies we would talk to where the CHRO and the CEO and maybe a few other people would get emailed a PDF with their results. And then they'd march the CEO out in front of the company and they'd pronounce, well, this year we're going to work on this. And 2 years later, they'd do another survey. And so what we've seen is really the change agents in your companies are the managers. And so helping managers understand what they need to do is a vital component. You know, we like to call it like your managers need a concierge, right? And they need, which is like a GPS. Like it should tell them where they need to go, how to get there, and then give them step-by-step instructions. Because unlike us, we're so passionate about engagement. This is what we eat, sleep, and drink all the time. You know, the average manager is really busy. So we need to help them. Okay, what's the fourth thing? The fourth thing that we've found is that conversations are really the fuel for taking action. There's a profound difference in the effectiveness of managers that have conversations with their teams. Managers that have conversations with their teams are significantly more likely to take action and to be successful in that action than managers that just get a report and decide on their own they're going to work on something. So, how do you enable conversations for managers? A couple of other points of data. So, managers that do have regular conversations, their employees are twice as likely to say that they receive effective feedback and they have meaningful conversations with their managers. 30% more likely they say they have the support they need from their managers. So one of the most important things that we recommend is that you have a simple framework for conversations. There's lots of frameworks out there. There's lots of acronyms out there. Ours happens to be the ACT acronym. And the A stands for acknowledge where you are, understand your scores. C stands for collaborate with your team, decide what's the one thing you're going to focus on. And T stands for take one step forward. But you can create your own acronyms if you don't want to use. Feel free to steal the Glint acronym if you want it, or borrow it, whatever, or create your own. But it's critical for managers that you keep it simple, simple, simple. The fifth thing is something we're starting to see in the industry today, which is we need to break down these artificial silos in data, in software, and in usability. And so what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, you know, we've got engagement and learning and goals and performance all in different places. So if I'm a manager, my engagement report is telling me I need to get better at recognition. Okay, I'm going to focus on recognition. But my manager told me in my performance conversation 11 months ago, I had to take out the sheet of paper to remember what she said. I need to get better on empowerment. Oh, and my goals are over here in a Google Doc. And if I want to do any learning, it's over here connected to my HRIS. I mean, that is such a disservice to managers to have all these things spread out across their various solutions. They're busy, they're trying to get their job done. And as an industry, we need to pull all of this into one place and bring it into the flow of work so that managers can really, really excel. And so when we think about helping people bring their best selves to work, you know, These are similar things. They're all about helping people learn, develop, and grow and be motivated and engaged. And so they should all be together in one holistic system. So a couple of examples of why this is important. Intuit found that for employees who had a positive onboarding experience, 43% more likely to be engaged. We've all seen this data. If people have a bad onboarding experience, I think one of our customers, 25% probability of leaving the company in the first year. PaySafe, people who have meaningful career conversations, 42% more likely in their engagement pulse to say positive things about their career goals, and significantly more likely to be engaged. So the sixth and final thing is we think the time is now to shift to people's success, to think about these things holistically and to think about them from the employee's perspective. So many of these solutions were created for administrators and finance and legal teams and not for employees, not for managers. And that's why people don't use them. So we think that you can approach people's success, truly help people bring their best selves to work, if you do three key things. The first one is that you create a focus for all of these programs so that learning, performance, engagement, goal setting are all integrated with similar themes. Starting with fit. Like, are people in the right roles? Alignment. Are they aligned to what they should be working on for the team, for the bigger team, for the company? Do they have the feedback to know whether they're aligned? Do they feel enabled, empowered? Are they motivated? Do they feel a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose? We know how critical this is. And finally, are they learning, developing, and growing? And all of these elements of people's success, whether it's your performance programs, what you call your engagement programs, satisfaction programs, your D&I surveys, your learning programs, they should all have this same unified focus on what you're trying to accomplish. Secondly, it's about habits. This might be the most important thing I'm going to talk about. If you develop a mechanism for good habits, you're home free. Well, you're almost home free. If you're pulsing quarterly, if you have mechanisms for peer feedback, if you're doing quarterly performance conversations, again, don't get me started. Performance conversations once a year, it's as bad as or worse than doing engagement surveys once a year. Setting goals once a year, checking in, maybe at all. Integrating these things into one system, into the flow of work, and creating good habits around them is critical. Which leads me to the last piece, which is structure. So how do we create the right structure for all of these pieces and get them into the flow of work? When I'm scheduling a presentation at a meeting, when I send out that invite, I should be able to ask people for feedback right in that invite. That feedback request goes right to them after the meeting's over. I can use a template or create my own questions. If I want to give a peer feedback, why can't I just do that in Outlook or Slack or Teams or Gmail? And when we, just going to do a time check here. Great. When we use data to make the case for people science, got a couple more slides. I want to share just a couple of pieces of data that we think are really important. The good news is that at a high level, a recent Harvard Business Review study we partnered with showed that 90% of leaders know that their most engaged employees are their highest performing employees. But there's lots of other really good data to make the argument for people's success in your companies. For companies that value both performance management and engagement and execute it well, they're 50% more likely to improve things like retention, productivity, and CSAT. So what are some of the things that means we need to do? I think we need to increase the use of lifecycle surveys. Like, why are our high-performing engineers leaving? Or why are women engineers in London that have been with the company for more than 5 years leaving? And our systems need to be telling this, so we don't have to go searching for that alert. Are high performers more likely to return? What's the impact of onboarding on engagement levels? Expand our use of cross-program analytics. Does higher engagement lead to actually better performance? What's the impact of performance conversations on engagement levels anyways? Like, we have collectively have the responsibility to prove to our leaders we've got the data to show that these things actually matter. Do learning classes impact performance or engagement? Like, how many companies are providing their leaders with the data so that they can make decisions to know how much to invest in these things? And finally, we need to start using passive data too. And once you integrate the systems, you can see all that. What's the impact of the frequency of performance conversations on engagement levels? Or of one-on-ones on achievement on goals? Or updating goals on the achievement of goals? When we've got an integrated platform, we can see across the various programs, what's the impact that we're having? So just to summarize, and I'll tell one quick story, there's 6 key things that we feel you need to get right to really pull it all together. One is you've got to push for more agile programs. Doing this once a year, twice a year isn't simply going to have the impact of a quarterly pulse. You've got to connect these things to business outcomes. As I said earlier, from my perspective, that's what gets you an even bigger seat at the strategic table. Thirdly, got to figure out how to empower your managers. And by the way, one of the pushbacks we get often is, like, the executive team doesn't want to do this more often. That's because they're not the ones that need to take action. It's the line managers that need to take action. So you need to help them understand it's about the managers. Having meaningful conversations has a profound impact on the effectiveness of your managers taking action. Integrating the data from all these programs into one platform, integrating the solutions into one platform, and then create really, really good habits. So I'd like to end with one story. HCA is a great partner of ours at Glint, and they take a really integrated view of people's success. And the results have been profound. They found that hospitals in the top quartile of employee engagement are 9 times more likely to also be hospitals in the top quartile of customer satisfaction. Which means, what we do as an industry doesn't just help the world be happier, isn't just good for humanity, but we actually literally save lives when we do this right. So thank you for being in our industry. Thank you for listening today, and I hope I shared 1 or 2 things that was helpful to you. Thank you.